they've had some ugly wins.
Oh yeah, it's the mediocre football. I think the play calling needs to change because it's boring and predictable. They lack some team speed that they've had in the past. They don't have the athletes this year. Michigan exposed that. You know, you saw it 2 weeks ago whenever we had Terry Beard on, and I just called Michigan a bunch of vaginas for 30 minutes, and then they beat our ass that night. So,
yes,
they lack team speed. They're very predictable. Here's a problem for Notre Dame tonight is they should beat Duke, but we had to come from behind last week against Virginia Tech and beat them by 1 point. Well, Duke played Virginia Tech about a month ago and beat them something like 45-10. So that's the same team we just played. So I think Notre Dame could be in a little bit of trouble tonight if they come out with this bland, boring offense and mediocre football like they've been playing the past couple of weeks. It's probably going to be a long night for Notre Dame.
We'll see what happens. You mentioned Michigan. I mean, maybe we got to start retracting some of the things we talked about Michigan and Jim Harbaugh. But
right,
I mean, who would have thunk it? He's off the hot seat. Here we go. Let's see what happens. What happens with him in the postseason? You think?
Well, it's going to come down to the Ohio State game. Thanksgiving weekend. That's going to probably drop them 9-3 because I don't see them beating Ohio State. That will probably knock them out of a New Year's Six Bowl also. What I would like to see, though, even if Notre Dame wins out, finishes 10-2, maybe a Notre Dame-Michigan rematch in a bowl game. That would be great.
Well, joining us now is Tony Donahue of the Tony D Podcast and Mo from the BS Sports Show. Mo, I know you're in No Shave November with us. No, wait. Oh, wait, that's right. You're just not going to do any manscaping. That's right. Mo, how are you, sir?
Very bushy here at this point.
Oh, y'all missed that conversation last week, man. It was one for the record books. Tony Donahue of the Tony D Podcast. Tony, how are you?
Good. How you guys doing?
Fantastic. We can get off of the weeds sometimes. And then Riggin, our official college football contributor. Rick, we're going to jump into some NFL topic. You can jump here and bell if you want, but if you want to join this conversation, I mean, where you at with your manscaping today?
Oh yeah. Nothing's getting shaved. I haven't shaved my beard in like 3 months, 2 months or something like that. So not going to happen.
Doesn't your wife shave your back?
Yeah.
Guys, let's get into this. We'll continue this conversation real briefly, and we'll get into NFL talk. But I want to get Mo and Tony's thoughts on the whole Chase Young debacle, stupidity. NCAA sticks their nose where they don't need to stick it. It was a loan, which means to be repaid. Anytime you get a loan, you repay it. He repaid it. There's no foul here. Yet they want to call foul. They want to beat their chest because the courts are now saying it's okay for athletes to make money off their likeness. Make money, not get a loan and pay it back. Start with you, Tony. What are your thoughts? Chase Young, Ohio State.
Yeah. Just like you said, the NCAA not doing what they're supposed to. I mean, I get the rules. I understand it, but I think you have to show some common sense, some leniency on some of these things. It was reported, 4-game suspension, accepting a loan from a family friend. I mean, if you're fortunate enough to have a family friend be able to help you and you've since repaid it, I don't see the big deal. I wasn't a college athlete, so I've heard stories of where you're eating ramen noodles every night, but I've also heard stories of people getting out, debt-free and having thousands of dollars in their accounts. So I think 4 games is a little bit too much. I think you need to show some common sense, some leniency on this.
And again, it goes back to the stupid rule, Mo. We'll get with you on the stupid rule on this. Ohio State, one of their star players, having some financial problems. All their parents want to do is come out to California and watch them in the Rose Bowl. If Ohio State puts them on one of their planes or just puts them on a plane, they're in violation. Or if I'm just an alumni, if I'm an Ohio State alumni, I'm a private business, and I get word that, hey, somebody needs some help. I want to do a good deed. Hey, here's some tickets to the game. Here's some tickets to airplane. but I'm in violation. Even if I do that on my own, I'm then considered a booster in violation. Mo, at some point, this gets ridiculous. And all it was a loan to help his parents get out there, and from a family friend, not even from an agent. So any connections to the team are gone. It was a loan from a family friend to help his parents get out to California so they could watch him in the Rose Bowl. I see nothing wrong here with this, Mo.
Well, I mean, while these rules are stupid, they're still, unfortunately, the rules. And the problem with the NCAA, even though it was a family friend, who's to say in the NCAA's eyes that the money didn't, even though it came through a family friend, that it didn't come from an agent? A lot of these agents and the things we've had over the past 20, 25 years in the NCAA where families have gotten money, there's usually been a middleman to where it hasn't come obviously directly from a shoe company or directly from an agent. So I think that's where the NCAA has an issue. Like I hate my next door neighbor and would like to kill him, but unfortunately it's still against the rules. So I would be in trouble if I did that. As dumb as these rules are by the NCAA and as inept as they've been for years, it seems like all of a sudden, ever since this whole thing with the athletes, courts ruling the athletes can maybe start getting paid off their likeness, the NCAA acts like they give a damn and they want to catch up on rules. It's been, 7 or 8 years ago that newspaper reporters had to hand NCAA cases on investigations that they had no clue were going on. So the NCAA has been in that for years, and these rules are dumb. But unfortunately, he broke them, and it looks like it's going to be a 4-game suspension. Now, my radio station obviously covers the Buckeyes here in Ohio, and I am the one Buckeye hater on the staff. So for me, I find it phenomenal.
Phenomenal. Well, and I'm curious on how that's going to affect the postseason, and we'll see how that goes. But it just, again, we're getting to the point of ridiculousness. Now, all these shoe deals and stuff that have been going down, I don't necessarily agree with. But however, if it was legal, or we use legal in a loose term here, if it wasn't against the rules for players to make money in their likeness, that would have never been an issue. So it will continue on with this saga. All right, guys, let's get into the NFL talk. The Eagles are on a bye. So is Ed Kracz, beat writer for Philadelphia Eagles, our official NFL contributor. So it's just us. So we'll start with the homer card with me and Tony and the Colts. Disappointing loss on the road in Pittsburgh, and I mean disappointing. If I hear one more person blame this on Vinny, I'm going to scream. You go from 1 week giving him the AFC Special Teams Player of the Week, then the next week saying he's got to go. First of all, Sanchez laces out. Let's do that. Second of all, he dug down into the ground a little bit because he was trying to miss the laces. Third of all, there's all kinds of a bazillion reasons how we got into that position to begin with. We shouldn't have lost that game, but it's not Vinny's fault. Disappointing loss. But I think we can make face against the Dolphins. But there again, the Dolphins did win their first one last week. On paper we think this is one that we're okay with Brian Hoyer being the quarterback on, but we're okay. But I mean, it's games like this that if you get too loose, you can spiral out of control very fast. Tony Donahue, the Dolphins, the Steelers, the Colts. What say you?
Well, first of all, I have to disagree with you because Adam Vinatieri did cost him that game, just like he cost him the game against the Chargers earlier in the season. And he can do well kicking indoors, but he's missed 10 field goals this season. And, the laces maybe screwed him up, but you can still bury that ball in there. He kicked the ground first. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of Vinatieri apologists out there, but that straw's kind of running short. It is what it is. You can't look at what he's done this year and say this is acceptable. If his last name was Smith, he would have already been cut for somebody else. There's not a lot of free agents out there. But I think that we're at the point now of Vinatieri where, he's cost them 2 games, and instead of being 5-3, they could be 7-1 just as easy. Jacoby Brissett's played well. They've played through injuries. We know Paris Campbell's been hurt. The defense has been decimated by injuries. T.Y. Hilton's going to miss this weekend. But like you mentioned, Tom, it couldn't be a better time to meet the Dolphins coming off a loss, possibly not having Jacoby Brissett and Brian Hoyer in there. They won't have T.Y. Hilton. They won't have Paris Campbell. Darius Leonard's banged up. You fortunately get a crappy Dolphins team. I think the Colts do get it done, but they're going to have to get healthy moving forward here if they're going to want to compete in the AFC South. And they already have the upper hand with 1 win already over the Houston Texans. They're going to have to do that again. I don't really have any doubt that the Titans and Jaguars are done for. They're dead in the water when it comes to the AFC South. But the Colts are going to have to stay faced because Houston's one of the toughest teams in the league right now. And if you look at the schedule the rest of the way out, for the Colts, yeah, they get the Dolphins this weekend. But the schedule doesn't really do them a lot of favors. You get the Jaguars here, that should be a win. But then you got to go to the Texans, Tampa Bay, New Orleans. Carolina's kind of caught fire a little bit here over the last couple of weeks. So we'll see what the Colts can do. They should be 7-1. They're 5-3, but I can guarantee you this: they won't say this in the locker room. But they're certainly happy to see the Dolphins coming to town this weekend.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, and we'll see what happens. And it's unfortunate that we see the end of a career with Adam Vinatieri, a Hall of Fame guy and a stand-up guy, and certainly one of the best players to ever play the game in his position. And it's unfortunate that we're seeing him go through these struggles. I think we are seeing the signs, the end times for Adam Vinatieri, and you're right. If his name was Smith, he would have been cut by now. But it's just a lot of times it's real easy just to blame the most obvious thing in front of our face. And I think there was a lot of issues there. But speaking of issues, Mo, your Cleveland Browns. I know that your station covers the Cleveland Browns. The old saying is throw everything out but the kitchen sink. But I think with the Browns, they just need to throw out the kitchen sink. What are your thoughts?
Well, it's Freddie Kitchens. Let's be honest, is coaching for his job. He looks clueless in a lot of situations out there. There's been tension in the locker room. I talked to you about it a little bit last week. There's some tension between the head coach and the wide receiving core. Odell Beckham last week obviously started to complain a little bit on the sidelines, as it was reported. Had somewhat of a snarky type attitude in practice a couple of days this week. It's a mess in Cleveland. The defense hasn't lived up to what it's supposed to be. Just like the Colts, they've been decimated in the secondary. No Olivier Vernon this week as well. So it's going to be another tough week for the Browns. Everything that they did last year that was such a big success for them, getting the ball out quick, and they don't do that this year. And their best player, Nick Chubb, as has been widely reported, numerous times this week, was not on the field for two of the biggest plays of the game last week. So I think Freddie Kitchens is in over his head, and should things not turn around, as they have a very easy schedule moving forward, this will be Freddie Kitchens' one and only year as head coach of the Cleveland Browns.
Which is very odd for a team to do a one and out, and I guess they thought they had it figured out, but this is clearly is not working. I know you cover the Bears. You do a dual coverage because of where you're located geographically in the world. But if you're a Bears fan, if you're the Bears, you got to be looking past this Mitchell Trubisky experiment. I think that ship has sailed and gone.
Well, it's funny. I took calls all week long on the show from Bears fans who were just so down on the Bears management because, you look at that draft, they trade up to get Mitchell Trubisky, and then with the trade of Khalil Mack, they don't even have a first-round pick. But, look at the two guys that they overlooked in Deshaun Watson and Patrick Mahomes, and you trade up to draft Mitchell Trubisky. It's very possible, much like Marcus Mariota, that his only chance to get on the field might be as a wide receiver the rest of the year. So the coach has been mum all week. Who's going to start the football game? Will it be Chase Daniel? Will it be Mitchell Trubisky? There is it's starting to become divided a little bit in the locker room, which is you never want to see happen when it comes down to quarterback controversy. But at some point you have to look at when these guys start to regress. You've seen Mitchell Trubisky in year 3 start to regress. We expect it sometimes in year 2. We've seen it happen now in year 3. But I think a lot of it last year is we didn't count on Trubisky for a bunch of big things because the defense was so good last year. And the defense of the Chicago Bears scored a ton of points last year off of turnovers. So and that's not happening this year. And so I think more of these weaknesses of Trubisky have come to light. You're right. At some point, they have to decide what they're going to do. Now, without a number 1 pick, you're not going to jump there and draft a guy like Tua. So you got to look, I think, this year to free agency. And are they going to be looking to a guy like Teddy Bridgewater, who the Saints obviously definitely want to keep? But that could be a possibility. Maybe Phillip Rivers is going to be on the market. Is there a chance that they could pry him away? The most likely scenario will be that your quarterback of the Chicago Bears next year is probably a guy like Andy Dalton. So the Bears are going to have to bridge that gap until they have another number 1 pick to try to draft a new quarterback.
And we'll certainly see what happens. It's too late for them to tank for Tua. But Tony, let's talk about Thursday's game. I mean, John Gruden has been the pun of jokes on this show for years.